right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We're right on time. Thanks everyone for joining. It's 9:15 a.m. Just to ensure you're all in the right place. This is building communities to connect employees and accelerate knowledge sharing. My name is Mike McLean. I'm a principal PM manager on the Viva Engage team at Microsoft. And I'm joined today by Aaron Rosenthal, who's a principal group product manager, also working on Viva Engage. Super excited to be here. Thanks for waking up early after the late night party. I think it's pretty nice to see everybody survive the Islands of Adventure, Kong, and everything else that was over there. I think this might be our last Viva Engage session this week, which is pretty exciting. All right, so building communities to connect employees and accelerate knowledge sharing. What are we going to cover today? We're here at the end of the conference. This is the last day, so you can kind of sit back and enjoy a nice smooth ride as we're going to help you learn how to get your communities going inside Viva Engage. I talked to a couple of people who are here today. Some folks are really experienced with Viva Engage. Some folks are just getting started, learning what it's all about. So we'll start by breaking this into 4 sections. First, we'll cover types of communities. So we'll discuss some of the communities we've seen at Microsoft that have been really successful and useful for our employees and our team members across the org. And they also reflect a lot of what our customers have experienced and the types of communities that they've created. And then Aaron will walk through some tips on how to get started with communities, what's useful to get these going, how to jumpstart some of that engagement. Then we'll shift into talking about how to drive that engagement even deeper. So we'll take a look at some key features available to community admins that they can leverage, and we'll talk through how those can help pull in some members and jumpstart and really spark conversation. And then lastly, we'll close by talking about how to reuse knowledge throughout communities. One of the biggest things with Viva Engage is the knowledge, the questions that are asked, the answers that are provided, and we'll talk about how those can be surfaced through Viva Engage. All right, so let's jump into types of communities. So if you've been here this week, you've probably learned that Viva Engage is really built on these 3 pillars around communications, communities, and knowledge. The features that we have in Viva Engage help our leaders communicate with their employees. They can build this great relationship from the top down where they're communicating out information that's landing wherever your employees are doing their work. They can receive announcements and posts and information in their email inbox. They can receive notifications in Teams. And of course, they can come to Viva Engage to consume that information as well. But it's not just top down, right? It's laterally as well. So folks are communicating across the company. That's where communities comes into play. So a lot of communities are created to let employees ask each other questions, find each other across the company. This is really great because it helps them work towards their business objectives and really improves their employee experience. There's a lot of folks that I've met at Microsoft who work in Xbox or sales or field that I probably never would have talked to if I weren't in communities related to special interests or asked some questions that are outside of my personal domain. And then, like I said, the knowledge that's generated in these communities is super valuable. So as one person asks a question, the saying goes, someone else also has the same question or has already asked the same question. So we're trying to make it easier for employees to find that information and surface it more proactively. And so all this is built on a great AI stack that we're continuing to integrate with large language models, where we can help encourage things like psychological safety around posting and really encourage the engagement that we want to see inside these communities. So now we'll take a look at some of the types of communities that we frequently see be very successful in our customers. When we look at the types of communities, there's really 5 different types that we'll walk through today. And these span organizational communities that are slightly more structured. These tend to mirror the setup of an organization, and then if you transition into like support and shared services communities, these are more like purpose-driven communities where we're trying to inform, engage, maybe educate our users and stakeholders across the organization around a specific topic. When we look at communities of practice, this is where we might have subject matter experts involved, where maybe we're trying to educate folks on our team on how to use a specific technology. When we go down the list here, then we start looking at diversity and inclusion. This is a great area where communities can serve a lot of value. Here we can connect employees with special interests and their allies and really help educate and bring folks together. Then the last area we'll talk about today are these employee interest groups, which are pretty fun. And these are sometimes not business related, but it's a way to bring employees together, in a more casual environment online. So let's jump into organizational communities. So what are the characteristics that we see in organizational communities? Well, very frequently, a community, like I said, might mirror the organizational hierarchy. We might have a community that reflects everybody in our engineering organization or our sales organization, or in a particular location. And so one aspect around communities that you have to think through is how is that membership managed, right? A community could be an opt-in community where it's created, it's grassroots, I've provisioned this, and anybody can join or they can leave at any time. On the other hand, you could have a community that reflects our organizational hierarchy where maybe we want to make sure we're reaching everybody who works in the Orlando area, right? And I don't want someone just to opt out because maybe they're not interested. I actually want to reach them because next week I have an important announcement I want to push out. And so to provision a community that has a more structured membership, we might leverage something like dynamic membership rules inside Entra ID. This allows us to create a rule that says, add every person whose location is mapped to Orlando, right? I could create a community that has every manager in my company, because I want to address people managers, everyone who's a storefront manager. And so organizational communities generally have more structured membership rules, and these are often configured as private communities. A private community means someone can't see the content of that community unless they're actually a member, right? So if I have a community that includes all my managers, here I can speak a little more freely about maybe some of the challenges that I'm encountering. Oh, I have an employee that maybe wants to move geographic locations, or I'm onboarding someone and I can't find the right onboarding document, right? I might not want all the employees in my organization to see that somebody on my team is interested in moving to a new location, right? So here they're a little more protected, which is perfectly fine. When we look at how these communities are used then, a lot of times these help encourage that knowledge sharing. Like I said, private means that it's a little more protective, a little more psychological safety. And then very frequently the communications are led by the leaders in that community. So here, since it is focused on an organization, you might have a leader post and try to address everybody on their team. So on the left side, there's a few examples. Microsoft, we have company news and events, which includes everybody in Microsoft. So we have a community that has a rule that pulls in 200,000 plus members, which is great. We also have communities focused on locations like Canada. And then the last one here looks at Contoso retail stores, right? So this is based on a specific retail example. So now when we transition to something that's slightly less structured, there are scenarios related to like support and shared services where you might have a particular discipline that needs to provide answers and a response to employees. So a good example would be like human resources, right? There's always lots of questions about benefits, policies, timing, enrollment. And so this is a case where the shared services team could engage with their employees. So as your organization, you could decide, hey, as part of our support approach, sure, we'll have maybe an email address that people could use to contact us, but could we also provision a Viva Engage community that can also serve that two-way conversation, right? And so these, when you compare this to the organizational communities, are more than likely to be public communities. Right? Because here, if I'm asking a question about, hey, when are the benefits enrollment? Well, it's really not a problem, if Erin, sees that question, because you might need the same answer, right? If it's super personal, sure, I could email HR and that's fine. But this helps share that knowledge and actually saves time for some of our support and shared services teams. And if someone does, decide to join this community because maybe they're starting to contribute, that's fine. And then they would start seeing some of that content show up, in their Viva Engage experience and in the emails that are generated from Viva Engage, right? But they do have flexibility to mute that if it gets too noisy, right? So there's a lot of control in the hands of the end user. And then Aaron will talk later about Answers in Viva, which is a really powerful capability that helps harness a lot of that knowledge that could be shared in the shared services communities and then surface it through the experiences that people use to search for information. Now, when we transition here to communities of practice, this is an interesting dimension because as we look at all the different technologies and applications and processes that people need to ramp up on, we have a lot of communities at Microsoft where we can help seed some knowledge with subject matter experts. And then if folks are, let's say, trying to ramp up on how to use GitHub or perform their first check-in or learn the processes to write a product specification document, they can come to subject matter expert communities and learn from other experts in the field. Again, these will probably be public, or if it's proprietary information, they could be private. That's totally fine too. But you have an option here with Viva Engage. And membership might be assigned based on if this is for a particular division and you want everyone to be plugged in, or it could be opt-in, right? If that's the process, that's okay with you. Now, the next area here is focused on diversity and inclusion. And this is a really great area to leverage Viva Engage because a lot of times our diversity and inclusion initiatives span the entire company, right? So as we look at the events that we celebrate throughout the year, at least in our case, very rarely are they sectioned off to just one particular part of the company. So this is an opportunity to partner with some of the employee resource groups that you might have inside your company. At Microsoft, we have women at Microsoft, right? We have blacks at Microsoft. And so as different events are scheduled throughout the year, we can help share information, create announcements around what's happening, help add events to the calendar. And it's actually a really productive way to have these positive conversations. Another great feature of Viva Engage is the ability to host live events and Ask Me Anythings. So very frequently, communities will partner with folks in these particular areas and host an Ask Me Anything, right? Or they'll host a live event, and then they can start fielding questions and have that two-way dialogue. So it's a really great way to bring together allies across your company for particular initiatives. So here we have a few examples, right? We have women at Contoso here. We also have a disability employee resource group for a particular location as well. And like I mentioned, we have blacks at Microsoft, which is super active inside Viva Engage. So the last area that we'll transition to here is one of my favorites. These are the employee interest groups, right? So Viva Engage, it's great. We don't have to be all business all the time, right? Special interest groups or employee interest groups give employees a way to connect on non-business interests as well. When we talk to customers, one of the most popular non-business employee interest groups is our dogs at Microsoft or dogs at Contoso. Everybody loves their pets, and it's kind of fun when you have a place to share. What's my favorite sports team? We've had a lot of folks working remote, part or 100% over the last few years. So a lot of folks have had to up their culinary skills. We've seen a lot of communities where people are sharing their recipes and what they're making. And it's kind of neat when you can build these soft ties across the organization. When I might not know or work with someone today, but 2 years from now, I might be in a meeting with them, and I'm like, oh, hey, I remember that guy. He had that golden retriever. So these are pretty fun. These are often public. Membership can be opt-in, and typically managed by passionate volunteers. There's always somebody who's willing to spark the community engagement. And so I kind of mentioned dogs, foodies, and another example here of hikers out in Washington, right? Kind of getting outdoors. So to kind of wrap this up, we cover these 5 areas, right? That are some of the most useful places to start with Viva Engage. And what this does is it really brings together employees not only for their job function and what they're doing work, but also their special interests outside of work. So if they desire, they can opt in, right, and they can participate, and they can decide what level of engagement they'd like to encounter. This slide here just kind of articulates how for these communities, we have different icons that represent each of these communities. It's really easy for employees to tell them apart. So as we break these across different segments, employees can see, okay, this employees at Microsoft, organizational-wide community, it's got our official logo, it'll have an official badge, which we can talk about later. And then some of these other leadership communities might have our leaders more visible, right, and we'll see them come through. And that just kind of transitions down to some of these employee interest groups. Great. And then the last thing I'll touch on here related to communities is the fact that when we transition across the spectrum, on the left side of those more organized communities, it is a lot of one-to-many where perhaps the company or the leaders are pushing out communication, and then that's reaching and scaling to their audience. That's one of the superpowers of Viva Engage. And then as you move to the right and you have these opt-in communities, it's a lot more many-to-many where people are communicating to each other. Just kind of keep that in mind as you see the communication flow across and up and down. All right, so with that, I'll hand off to Erin. She can talk through getting started.
Great, thanks, Mike. What a what a great overview. Yeah, look at that, applause. So I'm just going to rehash a little bit of this, just about, is what you can tell from looking at these different types is you have to be really intentional as you're creating a community. You need to really ground yourself and think, what am I trying to get out of this? What's the best way to set it up? Because it's just, as anyone who's set up a community knows, it's not as easy as you just create a group and you put people in it and then magic happens. I wish, we all wish, but that's just not how it goes. So, one of the things I noticed in going through these overviews is a lot of these details here about the clarity of the purpose of that community. Like what is it actually here for? Thinking about the rules of engagement, like, is this going to be, about dogs and anything's game? Or is this a learning community where, everyone needs to come here and share information about their experience on CoPilot? Like, those are pretty different in terms of how people are going to participate and join each other and communicate across the community. Thinking also about the brand, the tone, those different elements, setting it up well with good content, and I'll talk about that, and then, making sure you've got something there so that the first time someone comes into this community, they get what it's about. They know. They're like, oh yeah, this is the right place. I'm gonna find the information I'm looking for, or I'm gonna find the people I want, or I'm not, right? And it gives them that context immediately to know if this is a place they want to join and participate. But then the governance is also just so important here. Like I said, you can't just create the group and expect magic, as much as we wish it happened that way. So how are you actually going to drive the engagement? And Mike's going to talk more about that later, but how are you going to encourage people to share? What are you going to be doing? Like, what are the activities? Are you going to be, is this an ERG with like a monthly meeting? Is this a community of practice where you want to have a skill share once a week, so that people can come together and make these connections across silos? What are the stories? What is it that you want people to be sharing and talking about here? And most importantly, who can you bring in to help? So it's not just you. Some of this actually happens organically, which is really cool, especially what I've seen in communities of practice and in these interest communities. You get these passionate volunteers who just jump in and take care of everything. But you have to find those people, you have to reward those people. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Just to ground the conversation, like, let's just think for a moment about a specific community. Like, if you were planning on rolling out one of our favorite communities we're talking about right now, at M365 CoPilot Adoption Community, and thinking about all of those different practices, all those different factors, like, how are you going to set this up, like, quite literally? Is it public so everyone in the company can learn? Or if you don't have all the licenses, is it private? Is it more restricted? Do you have I forget the new name for AAD, Entra ID group here, that's a dynamic group that is just bringing in people with licenses, and as they get licenses, they're getting added one by one, and then they're just kind of welcomed into this community. And then who are the admins? What department is really driving this adoption and the learning here? And how can you get the right people in there? Like, who are your admins, who are your leads, who are the subject matter experts on this, who's responsible for learning in your organization, and making sure that you have these stakeholders on board to come and support it. This is super important. Then there's just the branding aspects. Cover photo, icon, like, what are you gonna make it look like so that it's a compelling place? In this case, with something like a CoPilot adoption community, it's a really good one to mark as official. So that's one of the settings available to to the network managers. Network managers can go through and mark a community as official so that it brings legitimacy to these communities. Like, you're in the right one. This isn't just some crowdsourced, community that people just built because they were really passionate about CoPilot. This is the official community to go to learn about how Kentoso or your company is going to be using CoPilot and to share these tips and tricks with each other. There's also a bunch of options on the right-hand rail for you to seed important content. So things like pinned resources that are links to other sites. And then I'll show you in a few minutes, or actually a bit later, a tool that we have to help you seed content in a community with what we're calling Intelligent Importer. It will look at a document, pull in Q&A, and that helps create that welcoming environment so that, again, people have that sense of place when they get there. And then another really important thing is to pin an intro message at the top, so especially as you're kicking this community off, that everyone knows what this is about. And in time, you can move more of this into the info panel in the right-hand rail so that these ground rules and the sort of about as the community's kind of picked up and gotten off the ground are still there and still relevant for people to be able to find. I mentioned this, so I'm going to just keep mentioning this because this, I think, is the biggest thing to really learn as you're getting a community off the ground. This is actually a slide from the people who run what we call connected communities at Microsoft. And they are a phenomenal group of, I couldn't ask for a better test group for me to learn from, frankly. They run the communities of practice across different disciplines, well, not just disciplines, but different industries. For sales and our customer service, everyone to be able to connect and learn. So whether it's kind of a blend of industry and technology. So on some of the prior slides you'd seen, there's this community called Machine Learning, or AI/ML community. That community is phenomenal to get people together across the company and talk about what's going on in AI, what's the latest thing happening, and ask and find those experts and get that support from one another in this emerging space. And what's really cool for me to see is as this community is evolving, it is the place for the absolute latest knowledge about AI. But they don't just do it alone. They are so intentional at building these communities. They have a community steering team that thinks about what are the communities that we're going to need as communities of practice? And they talk about this. They have 3 roles they identify for each of their communities. One are community leads, which are sort of engagement leads for that community, people setting up events. Another is SMEs, who are subject matter experts across the community, who are going in, answering questions, bringing in new information, provoking people to share. And then they also have just general leads for the community, making sure it's all happening, bringing in more people, bringing in more resources. And if you see at the bottom here, that's 14 people running each of these communities. Now, some of these communities at Microsoft are, 14, 20,000 people. It's a big group of people, but it takes a village to really get this off the ground and get everyone understanding what their role is, what they need to do here, and participating so that the community can then start running itself. There is a point, I will say, that a community will run itself. We've got enough engagement happening that it's not just on that initial community manager or that sponsor to kind of keep pushing it. There are some habits you can do around communication just to kind of build the habit and find those interested people who can keep it going. I found this slide incredibly useful just to really ground what it takes and being that intentional about it. And with that intentionality, especially with getting something off the ground, you have to also think about what is that initial engagement plan? And setting this expectation also with anyone who's going to be helping you. So on a daily basis, you have to go through and make sure you're looking at questions in this community of practice. Are they getting answered? Are they getting routed to people? Even after that, are you getting marked best answer so you know you're getting closure? And I'll show you some tools that we've added through Answers to help with all of that and make that a lot easier. Another thing that you'll find, depending on your type of community, is people post here, but it's not the right place. And so you have to go through. There's this ability to move communities in Engage, which is super helpful, or move a conversation in Engage, super helpful. So you can say, this isn't the right place for it. You can leave a comment in that post and say, I'm going to move this over to this more appropriate community where you're more likely to get what you want out of this post. You're going to reach the better audience there. And then there's just these weekly things you need to do, like going in and posting content on a regular basis, different types of content to try to get different types of engagement, checking in on the stats. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing in analytics and some of the improvements coming to analytics to help with that. And then again, provoking people, gathering stories, finding someone to say, hey, would you post this week? I'd really like to hear your story, and going and doing the groundwork there. And there's some things we're doing to help. What I didn't say at the beginning of this session is there's some teasers here of what's coming next. We know that there are a lot of new features coming to communities, and there's things that people have been asking for years. Hey, can I hide that? There's a little module in the right-hand rail that shows M365 resources, but not every community uses those. I see a yes, so some happy people. We're starting to make some of this more modular, so you can start picking and choosing because we're adding more stuff that you can bring into your community. And it can't just be the Wild West of everything. No one will find anything, right? So we're giving you more control over what you can have in the community, enabling you to shut off things that you don't need and turn on the things that you want. We also have things like goals integration. I'll talk about that in a minute. And the ability to designate community leaders. This is intentionally ways of calling out, like this is an organizational community, like here are the people leading it, here are the leaders, just like in Leadership Corner, and calling them out. We've added the ability to bring goals into the community through Viva Goals. So this is really great as you think of that intentionality. Literally, what are the goals in your community? How are you doing in achieving those goals? Are you all working together in achieving that? So this is a really cool way of being able to highlight the goals that you and your steering committee, the board of people running this community have been targeting and aiming for, and monitor, how are we progressing on this? And then this is more about all the things that we're adding. There's a new settings experience coming soon, and we have so many things that it's gonna be a whole new page. It's not gonna be this dialogue anymore. So this is just, I know it's blurry, it's hard to see. Some of the things we're still working through what is here, but this gives you a sense of all the customization and modularity that we want to start bringing to communities. As it is, there's things you can do. You can already mark a community as, of course, public and private. You can mark it restricted, so if it's a news community that only people who have access as admins can post in that community, so you can do those one-way communications. You can also do things like if it's a community of practice or a services community, go ahead and set that publisher to the question post type. If you think that you're going to be getting a lot of questions, you'll get a lot of superpowers out of doing that. So just stay tuned, more to come, but just wanted to give you that. Now, Mike, to talk about how to keep driving engagement, because we know that's so important to keep the community going.
Great, thanks, Erin.
You guys are so
All
kind.
right. So you're probably sitting back, I see some looks, you're like, hold on, I have to pull together all these people to manage these communities. What is going on? This sounds crazy, it's a lot of work. Well, we're gonna talk about how to make it super simple, all right? It's actually pretty exciting once you get these communities going. What we're sharing here today is a list of community manager secrets, all right? So as you go through and you decide, all right, we're gonna have some structured communities that reflect our organization. We might have some special interest communities our employees can provision from the bottom up. That's great. Each one of those communities is going to have somebody who's kind of a champion, right? They're a community manager. So as a community manager, some of the secrets to start driving this engagement, is to welcome and encourage new members. You can introduce yourself to the community. Say, hey, I'm Kyle. I've owned classic cars for 20 years. I love it. I'm a gearhead. We're really looking forward to talking with everyone about your vintage cars, okay? You can let people know who you are. Lots of times there's more than one community manager, right? So you can introduce yourself. Engage a little bit with your members, right? Very similar to LinkedIn. You want to drive some engagement. You need to participate. As people ask questions, it's super easy to mark best answer now inside Viva Engage. When someone asks a question, if you jump ahead to number 8, you really don't want to leave posts unanswered either. So as questions are asked, just flag it as best answer, right? It helps boost some morale of those members. It lets people know as they ask their question, they're going to get an answer, which is great. And as a community manager, if you don't know the answer, it's totally fine. Like, you don't have to know the answers to everything. It's really easy to @mention someone, pull them in, they'll get a notification through our notifications platform, and hopefully they'll jump in and they'll reply, okay? That best answer, people like getting kudos, so it's really nice to see that badge show up on the post. So you can tag experts, you can share other relevant conversations happening. This can occur from inside your company. You can share information from outside of your company as well. So it's really easy to drop in links and drop in other information. You can add topics to conversations inside Viva Engage. We have the ability to add hashtags for campaigns, which is really fun. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And some community managers that are really engaged, they'll post roundups, right? Oh, hey, this is the most interesting topics over the past week or past month, depending on their schedule, which is great. So just think about how you'd like to see people engage, with your communities if you were a member. Now, inside the community, there's a few different types of conversations that we support. So as a community manager, it's good to be aware of these. We have regular posts that can be authored, which is great. What's really nice about Viva Engage is if someone starts to type a question, we're becoming a lot more intelligent around understanding, oh, they're actually posing a question. Should we flip that to a question type? And now, if it's flagged as a question type, we can do a lot more with that in the service. So rather than just be a post that gets generated, it could actually be flagged as a question, right? And people will see that and probably react differently. Within the community, you can host an Ask Me Anything, which means folks can start posting questions and engage even before the event occurs. We have praise, which we haven't talked about too much yet, which is a real nice way to share kudos. So if folks are doing something well, it's great to call them out, right? And because if someone's doing well, you want to encourage that behavior. And then, when we look at how content is authored, we've been investing a lot in supporting long-form content. So now, yes, you can create a very quick post, and you can add that in Engage, and it's really easy if you just want to schedule 5 minutes a week to do that. If you have a roll-up, you can author a really beautiful article now and make an article post inside Viva Engage. And so a lot of us will do that when we come back from the conference this week, and we'll share some photos and say, hey, these are the top 3 takeaways I had from the conference in Orlando. So now we'll take a look at a couple of specific features that might be useful as you look at communities. We're really excited to announce on Monday this week that CoPilot in Viva Engage is generally available. Sorry. Woo! It reached general availability. And so, yeah, this is really exciting. Last month we announced that Viva Engage integrates with Viva Feature Access Management, so you can roll this out in a controlled way inside your organization. We have another session that went into more details around how to configure that. It's a little more technical. But from a community engagement perspective, this is a really great way to get started with your posts, right? So as a community manager, it's really easy to start just plugging into CoPilot some ideas, like how should I create a post to get my community at Dogs at Microsoft and engaged, right? You can get a lot of great ideas from CoPilot, and that's totally fine. One thing we're trying to do is encourage the sharing of the fact folks are using CoPilot, right? We don't really need to hide the fact that CoPilot helped me craft this post. Yeah, I'm going to refine it, so it's going to reflect more of my personal tone. But it's fine to share that we use CoPilot. And so this is a really great way to get started. Inside Viva Engage, you can craft your message with CoPilot, and you can ask CoPilot to help you with ideas, which is fantastic. And if you're a leader, your delegate can also use CoPilot on your behalf, which is great. So you can use CoPilot to craft posts inside this community. You can also use it for suggestions on how to run like a community survey through Viva Glint, which is a really great use case. So once you craft this message, then you can take some time to refine it a bit, right? We want to make sure that we keep the human in the loop here. So the user can come in, they can say, refine my message, change the tone, highlight a particular part that you'd want to refine, and then you could add your own personal comments. That's totally fine, and then post this to the community, which is great. Now, another area that might be interesting to drive engagement is to run a community. Has anyone used campaigns yet in Viva Engage, or is this kind of okay? Good, you, perfect, great. So a campaign is a way to collate a lot of the posts and activities that are happening on a particular topic, right? So at Microsoft, we might have a giving campaign, the month of September or October, where we encourage donating to nonprofit organizations, and it's really exciting to see people post, use the hashtag for the giving campaign. If someone comes and they click that giving campaign hashtag, they can see a roll-up of everything everyone's posted. They can learn about the organizations that they support. If we have, let's say the Summer of One, where our interns are coming this summer, that's a great example to have a campaign where our interns can share their experiences, and it really helps pull them in. And it's a tool to really create more engagement, not only just for your specific community, but with your employees across the company. As people onboard, you want them to feel like, hey, they're being welcomed, into your organization. And so campaigns are a really great way to do that in some of those scenarios. Now, we have a few areas we're going to share here that are coming soon as well. Community managers have the ability to pin posts. We're actually going to be supporting the ability to pin multiple posts, which is really cool. So if you have an announcement that you want to have there, let's say for the entire month of May, because in our organizational community, we want folks to take their training, that's great. We can leave that there. And then we can pin another post that says, hey, all hands is coming up next week. Awesome. Okay, good. Take it down. Now put up another one. Hey, we have this fundraiser happening the week after. Great. Okay, take it down. So now you have a little more flexibility in terms of the type of content that you want to pin and unpin. All right. So admins, they'll have the ability to do this. Right now, we're looking at supporting up to 6 pin posts at a time, which is great. And they'll show in the order of the latest pins as they'll start showing up in the community. Okay. Now, the next area I'll talk a little bit about is our community insights. So as a community admin, you have access to a lot of statistics around the engagement in your community. So once you've gone through that journey of provisioning the community, adding your members, or seeing people subscribe, and you start creating that content, now you can evaluate that engagement. So inside our community, we actually have a really beautiful analytics dashboard where you can see a lot of statistics around the increase or decrease of engagement, around the numbers, percentage, members, joins, monthly active users, things like that. And so we've got a lot of great content that goes super deep into this area, but I just want to make you aware that we have a really fantastic analytics suite that helps the community admin really manage all that engagement. All right, so the last area I'll touch on here around driving engagement is multi-tenant organizations. Does anyone here work with more than one tenant at their company? Yeah, okay, a few, good. So when we talk to customers, very frequently, they'll have more than one tenant. And usually this is because their company has acquired another company, or there's been some type of divestiture, or they have another division in another location, right, that had its own tenant, or some partnership. And so we're really excited to announce that multi-tenant organization capabilities have also gone generally available as of last week. Woo!
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. And this is really a Microsoft-wide initiative because if you have more than one tenant, you really need your leaders to have the ability to reach out to all those individuals that are in their scope. Okay. At Microsoft, we have Microsoft Corporation. We also have GitHub, right? We also have Activision Blizzard. We have LinkedIn. There's a whole variety of subsidiaries. So someone like Satya Nadella wants to be able to reach everyone. So with Viva Engage and supporting what we call MTO, you will be able to create a community that spans those members that are in those additional tenants. So this is pretty exciting. It's something we want to make you aware of since it's related to driving community engagement. And it doesn't just stop at communities. With MTO, you'll be able to create announcements that are published to all those users across the tenants. A leader can post to their storyline, and then that'll be visible to all of their employees. And they can host things like Ask Me Anythings and events. And so we have storyline and announcements that are generally available. We'll have communities coming soon along with campaigns running across these organizations. So to give you a little peek in terms of how this looks, we have a demo that we recorded, and what this is going to walk through is what it's like for someone to post to their storyline in a multi-tenant org configuration, so you can see how that post shows up for multiple users and how they'll be able to react to it in the context of their work inside Microsoft Teams. In the keynote this week, they briefly showed how in Microsoft Teams you could switch between users that are in different tenants, right, without having to log out and log back in. And so you'll see a little bit of that here when they create the post and then they start reacting. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and just think about it in the context of communities and how posts get shared.
MTO leaders can compose storyline content just as they do in single-tenant configurations with some key additional features. Users from other tenants can be mentioned, with their home tenant badge visible to differentiate users. Rich media, such as images, can be attached to the text and all MTO users can view it. Finally, the leader's content can be designated an MTO storyline announcement by choosing the audience with multiple organizations. The Spoke tenant user receives a notification of the announcement in Teams as well as in Viva Engage. The Spoke user can react to the announcement as if they were part of the leader's tenant, and they can reply to the announcement in the same way, complete with GIFs and emojis to illustrate their response. Their engagement will be visible to other users in the MTO. Going to a more active thread, a Spoke tenant user can react and respond to the replies of other users in the MTO, complete with differentiating badges. To the end user, it feels like everyone belongs to the same organization. No one is external or limited in their participation. Finally, the MTO leader can take advantage of in-depth conversation analytics on their MTO content. While data is available in aggregate by default, the leader can break down these stats on a per-tenant basis, directly comparing and contrasting their post-engagement across verticals or divisions, providing critical insights that influence their corporate communication strategy going forward.
Okay, so that gave you a little flavor of how engagement can be driven across multiple tenants using Viva Engage in communities and storylines. So pretty exciting. All right, well, that's it for me. I'm going to hand it off to Erin to take us home with knowledge. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Mike. So now over to an area I'm just really passionate about. So excited to be talking about all the work we've been doing over here. We've already touched on these different types of communities, but the cool thing about looking at all these communities is that they're a place for people to go and share knowledge, right? You have these service communities where someone can ask a question and get an answer from an expert, same with support, right? And you have these communities around learning so that people can grow in their career. And and even communities of practice for connecting across organizations, across literal organizations and MTO. So you can have a learning culture and a supportive culture and make it so people aren't afraid to ask a question and reach out and learn from each other. And the knowledge that you can accrue as an organization here in a community is just so beneficial. Like one of the things that really sets a community apart from other things, especially email lists, like old school email lists, is the longevity of this content. Many communities are public. So when you just search, you might be able to find this post and you'll be able to learn really easily from that. And even for communities that are private, if you become a member, you get access to all the conversations that happened before that day. So you can instantly tap into the wealth of knowledge that's already been stored in this community. And what we've been doing over the last couple of years is really helping you tap into this knowledge, leverage this knowledge. We'll talk more about where that's all going. But we've started with something it's incredibly simple. It's when you go to ask a question in a publisher. This is why it's so important to let people know about the question publisher and to set it as the default publisher in these types of communities. When someone goes to ask a new question, we now show related questions. This is for Viva Suite license, for CNC licensed users, but they get this ability to see related questions so that if the question's already been asked and hopefully answered, they can get their answer right away. If it's not answered quite fully or it didn't quite satisfy everything that they wanted, they can go and ask a question. And we'll loop in experts to have them engage and answer it. We're building all sorts of tools around this. So there's an answers tab that someone can go to, view all the questions that have been happening across their communities. It's a relevance-based feed, so it's tailored to you based on where you engage, what you know, what topics you follow, and you get this nice feed of questions where you can go and help anyone across the organization. Now the search, all of this is actually backed by AI. There's a couple really magical things that we've done. One is it's a LLM-based search. So when you're looking for a question, we don't just look, have you used this word in this question before? We're looking at the meaning of the question and finding questions with a similar meaning and surfacing them there. And the really cool thing is it works automatically across languages, which just blows my mind whenever I see it happen. So you can really help each other learn from one another very quickly through this ability. And again, if you're using slightly different words, you'll be able to find that knowledge you're looking for. The other thing that we've done, which is amazing, is if you've already have a community up and running, you've been capturing this knowledge for years and years in a community, we are using AI behind the scenes to infer this question title from your existing posts, and we will surface it here based on, or surface the body of that message in this case, here based on what we see that we think this question is about, so that you're not missing out on the years of content that your organization has already been accruing as questions. Hey, by the way, if you have content that wasn't marked as a question, we also have the ability, we've had this for a while now, to go and turn it into a question to make it so that all of these questions are much, much easier to find and you get this value. So here's a quick demo of someone asking a question. And in this case, they're asking a question and they're able to find a similar question. So you'll see that as they're typing out their question, the results are updating. They have a bunch of related questions showing down below. They can click on this question, view it, and they're happy. Like, okay, great, I got the answer that I needed. So they go back to they can go back to the answer screen. Now, sometimes you don't get the answer you're looking for, right? And so you need to fill it out. So this one, now we're gonna be looking for a question that, not actually finding a related question that I'm interested in. So I fill out more details in this case. And as you see at the bottom, another nice thing that's happened here is we show suggested topics that you can tag on this post, so that when this post gets posted, when this question gets posted, it's routed to people, and it's also organized based on that topic. So you see it's now showed up in the feed, nice question with a description with that topic. Like I said, that topic helps route these questions to experts. So in this case, this is Megan. Megan is an expert in Engage. You don't have to be, we don't have that role right now, like you don't have to be an expert, but she's just sort of the person who participates, who does this. And she gets a notification that there's a new question, some questions she hasn't answered. She goes into, this is the answers tab, and has that question in her feed. So she's able to then open up this question, oh, sorry, wrong button. Open up this question, add or answer directly there. She can even post as someone else in this case, which is one of the superpowers of all this being built in Engage. She can post her answer. She's satisfied with it, marks post. It's there, like the answer exists. She can also now look at, she saw that there's that topic, CoPilot on it. She's able to go to that topic page that exists in Engage and follow this topic, because she was like, wait, I don't actually follow this already. I'm an expert on this stuff. So she wants to stay on top of this topic. This will make sure that any question post with this topic on it shows up in her feed automatically. We're also enhancing this experience so that you'll be able to subscribe. So if you are an expert, a subject matter expert on a topic in an organization, you'll get instant notifications for new posts with that topic on it. So that's coming soon in the coming quarter, I hope. We're working on it right now, just wrapping up the details on it. So hoping to get that over to you shortly. But all of these things really help get those experts engaged and save them all the time and energy that it takes normally to stay on top of questions. Now, back over to Alex. Like, Alex got a notification saying, hey, you got an answer to your question. He can now go into either his team's notifications, or in this case, his activity feed, and see the question, see the answer right away. It's automatically expanded so that he can benefit from that. And if he's happy and satisfied with this question and the answer, he can mark it best answer to make it easier for someone else to benefit from this knowledge in the future. Questions that get marked with best answer show up in a bunch of places. As you saw in the related questions, you get a little badge there. At the top of this question, you see that there's a badge there. And these are also indexed and showing up in search, and I'll show that to you in a minute, meaning workplace search, so even more broadly. And let's make sure this is the one I think it is. And then, it's hard to keep these experts engaged. And there's two things here. One, we have badges, which you saw just before it transitioned to the screen, where they can receive awards and recognition. And then also we have analytics, and we have two different levels of analytics. One at a personal level, which you can see here, where you can see the direct impact that you're having as an expert in the organization. What questions have I asked that have really had great reach and have helped a lot of people, and you can see how much time you've saved others in the organization. And where have I been answering? Like as an expert, that's one of the main things you do is answer questions. So where have I been answering? How have I been helping people here? And this is all really useful because a lot of people are measured on this in their organization, so it makes it easy for you to collate all of that. We also have the Global Analytics tab, which shows, similar to some of the other analytics pages, the scope of what's happening in analytics for answers across your whole network. So there you can see things like time to best answer, your best answer rate, your answer rate, and see how the organization is performing. You can also see the amount of time you've saved on your network. And yeah, for us at Microsoft, it's been really fun to watch that evolve, because we're now at the point, I think, we've saved 520 hours or or days or something like that. So we've paid for a person, or several people, and we've saved. Yeah, and our time to best answer is now like in hours. So we can see that these tools are actually helping people get answers to their questions faster, while also reducing the overhead on experts in the organization. It's a really, really powerful tool. And I'll talk a little bit more about the analytics there. But earlier, I said it's important to seed content in your community, to get it off the ground. And another thing that we've added recently is what we're calling Intelligent Importer. This is a really cool tool that I think people aren't even, I don't think we even express how cool it is, actually. You can take any document and feed it into Intelligent Importer, and it reads the document and extracts Q&A from it. So if you're rolling out like a new policy change, or even CoPilot 101, like trying to get people using CoPilot in your organization, it'll take that document you wrote, extract questions and answers, and enable you to review the questions, edit them, delete the ones you don't think you're gonna want to post, maybe add a little bit more detail, but really simplifying that flow so that you can just publish these questions. It does it in batches of 20 or so you can instantly get questions in around whatever policy change or whatever's happening in your network. So let me see if this runs. So this shows how this works. So the Intelligent Importer is now available in communities. And this is an example document. Sorry, it goes by really fast. But an admin can go pick that. It then is extracting the content from that document, seeing the results, and then again, you can edit it, which is it's really nice. So here you see there's no description. If you wanted to add a description, you could do it. Or you can choose to just view the question as well. So yeah, I just want to make sure I got all the details here. Or you can delete. So if you're like, this is just not, this is too basic, people aren't going to find value in this, you can get rid of it. You can also select the different questions that you want to post, and you post it, and it posts under your name in the community, both for the questions and the answers. So we warn you about that and let you know, but then as soon as you hop into the community, you'll see all of those questions have been imported, and you can see them in the feed. Again, this is a great way to get a new community off the ground for any of these communities of practice, or the support community for any new tool that you're rolling out in your organization. So all of this, it's really been incredible. We just GA'd Answers in Communities in February, and towards the end of February. So in the last 2.5 months, we've been able to look at the impact that it's had on organizations with access to it. And that related question feature that I showed you, that's actually resulting in someone finding a question, and clicking on it and getting information 45% of the time when asking a question. That's incredible when you think about the number of either duplicate questions you're avoiding, the impact that has on your experts who are helping to support this community, or to help people refine their question, ask a better question, learn a little bit more, and get a little bit deeper with the question so that they can get what they want even faster. As a result of this, we're also seeing through the expert routing and the Answers tab that we're having a faster time to answers by 13 hours. So in some networks, let's say it was 24 hours to get an answer, now you're down to 11. It's one day, but it's not a full day. In many organizations, we're seeing it about 4 or 5. So within half a day, the person's getting an answer, and you're starting to get that engagement. We're also seeing an increase in best answer rate, which is incredible because we actually didn't do anything there. It's the same as it's been. We're not prompting yet. But it's showing how people are really getting the value and understanding how to go and mark best answer. And it's resulting in time saved across the whole organization. So it kind of pays for itself pretty quickly, honestly. Yeah, so with all that knowledge, like I said, we've been doing some really cool stuff to make this more accessible. The knowledge is no good if no one can find it. If you have to find that specific community, go in there, or you have to find the search field and engage, any of those things. So we're bringing the questions and answers into workplace search. That is rolling out now. I think we started last week. So if you don't have it yet, you should soon. Nick, you should have it soon. Let me know if you don't yet. He's been asking, so. Content will be showing up in workplace search, and from there, people can even ask a question. So you don't even have to know that answers exist. You don't have to know this community exists. You can go ask a question from here, we'll route it. We'll try to figure out where it needs to go and get it in front of the right people for you. This effort here to bring this content into search is actually far more beneficial than you would think, because what's happening is we're also bringing this content into Substrate, which then makes it available to CoPilot. So soon, and we're working on this internally right now, answers content will be informing CoPilot so that when someone asks a question in CoPilot and answers as reference material for it, it can use that as knowledge in forming an answer, include that reference back into answers as well, which is really awesome because people, instead of having a reference to a dead document that hasn't been updated in 6 months or a year or whatever, this is a reference to a live conversation. And so someone can go in there, ask another question, check out more detail about what was happening in the conversation here, and engage. So it helps people to actually learn and go deeper in their learning by being here. So it makes the knowledge more accessible, it helps people, be smarter, like learn more and dig in and find these communities. So that is in progress right now. And the other thing we're working on, it's a little bit of a stretch, trying to get this to happen. One of the things that we even say about CoPilot is, almost done. One of the things we say about CoPilot is you have to be skeptical of its answers. Well, in those cases, you're going to want to loop in an expert. And so you'll be able to ask CoPilot to post this in a community over in answers, and we'll loop in experts to help validate and verify whatever you're seeing here. So this is a super great way, because if you actually think about it, you're asking a question. How do I know if this is the right answer or not? I wouldn't have asked the question if I knew it. So this helps you bring in others to help verify that this is actually true, or this is the most up-to-date thing. So that's everything we've got. So happy to take questions in the next couple minutes. There's lots of ways to learn more about Engage and everything we're doing with all these different community types. Amazing adoption resources, thanks to our team, and lots more. So I see some hands coming up who want to run around with a mic. Thank you, Dan. This is our amazing Dan Holm. For those of you who don't know him, he's amazing.
Thank you for being an amazing audience.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being an amazing audience.
Are badges part of the answers feature, or can you have badges without answers?
I think there's two different things. I think there's badges on campaigns where people can earn badges there. And then there's also badges within answers. And they accumulate into the same pool, but they're slightly different. So like you can earn badges based on number of questions number of times you've answered and it's been marked best answer. Like, so it's accruing in interesting ways like that. Not yet. No, we don't have that ability yet.
Yeah, but since it's a small room, the question was, can an admin assign badges? Concepts like that are not far away.
Yeah. Anything else? Oh, you're getting your exercise in.
With the roles, like you mentioned it before, like the SME and roles, stuff like that.
Right.
I feel like you kind of said that's not there yet. Is that something that's coming? Because that is something I've got
Stay tuned.
4 or 5 clients I've
There's a
rolled
lot of
Viva
things-
out for, and
Yeah.
they're asking for that kind of stuff.
Perfect.
So,
Let's talk. I'd love to hear this feedback. We're hearing this
Yeah.
from others, definitely, because again, you want these people to be rewarded. You want them to, you want them to be able to feel that their work is adding up. So I'd love to get your contact info and talk to you more about what you're looking for.
Hi.
Hi, Nick.
The integration with Viva Goals was really interesting. Is that going to help provide sending information back directly into Goals when you're working in Goals to help update and close
I think
those
it's a
out?
direct connection between the
It's
two.
two-way?
So you can open up the, I believe, we'll have to take a look. You can open up the OKR and look at it in Engage, and then you can also go back over to Goals into that point. So it's an entry into it. So it's not just one way.
Will it pull information from the Engage conversations, though, to help you update your goals?
I don't think so.
yet?
Yeah, I don't think it does that, but you can update the goal within, I think you can update the goal within, or at least quickly get over
Still a
to
big
goal.
help. Thank you.
Good, glad you're using it.
From a community discovery standpoint,
Yeah.
is there anything on the roadmap to make that experience a little bit more, I don't want to say interactive, but
Yeah.
if you're putting some metadata into a community to be able to search, find, group, organize based on maybe those 5 community types that you've listed in the beginning of the presentation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can take this one if you want. Yeah, we've actually been doing a lot of work on the search side to make the community more discoverable from a search perspective. So whether you're searching in Microsoft Teams or searching in Viva Engage, they actually are surfacing a lot easier, especially communities that have like multiple words in their name and
Yeah.
a variety of different aspects. We do have items on the backlog to improve that discovery experience. The discovery experience that we've had in the product for a while is still there today. Go in there and they can surface. But the other thing we're doing is also improving what gets surfaced in like our daily digest and our discovery digest as well. So a lot of that will be kind of presented to the user on a daily or weekly basis.
And there is also an updated discovery experience that's not finished rolling out yet. Challenges have happened, of course, but it's one of those things that we are looking at so that you can also find official communities more easily, at least from these experiences. Because why go ahead and create these official communities if you can't easily find them? So yeah, between search, and we have tremendous improvements in search if you haven't used it recently, between search and between an improved discovery page. It's still static, and I mean it's dynamic, but like it's not not a ton of categories or anything like that just yet. But but we've been thinking about that for a while too. So. One more.
Great question.
Oh, 2 more.
Hi. So a lot of great info there. I was wondering if you guys could highlight some of the biggest benefits to using this over like a million different Teams channels, and then how would one do you have any suggestions for like shifting a Teams community like from a Teams channel to these Viva Engage communities?
You want to do that one? Great.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can take that.
We have lots of thoughts there.
I think there's
a long answer.
that's a big question, and I'm happy to chat more in detail. But in summary, channels really are meant for small working groups. They always were. Microsoft tried to pitch them as like the solution for org-wide communications, and they just don't work that way. A lot of data from Microsoft and from external parties show that. So a channel is really good for a group of people who are working together, actually working together on a shared project because they can collaborate and have all the stuff they need in one place. It's not designed for people to sort of stay in touch with what that team is doing or for that team to communicate to others about what they're doing. Channels are not well suited for that. It's definitely not suited to connect with people across multiple teams and share knowledge and best practices. So the scenarios for communities are really clear. And so that's sort of point number one. Migrating from Microsoft oversold Teams and channels for many, many years, and people are now realizing that a number of scenarios really are better supported by actual communities when you're trying to capture knowledge, reuse it, make it more discoverable, et cetera. And to move, the best practices I've seen include looking at the channels that a team has today, where that team might better be a community, and thinking about translating those channels into topics in a community. So for example, our communications community, which is 1,000 communicators, moved from Teams to a Teams channels actually, to a community, and they created topics that were very specifically named, like GEEK, which is their acronym, Geek News Advisories, and that used to be a channel, right? So they have this community where everything rolls up, but if people want to filter down to a channel, they just click the topic in the right rail and they go to it. So that's one best practice. There's no migration tool, but honestly, channels, our experience with customers are channels were not supporting the scenario so effectively in the past that leaving them behind is not that painful. So there's no easy migration tool, at least not. There might be some third-party tools.
Yeah, one idea about the migration is you have to think through the fact there's membership in that team, in that channel, and then there's also content. So if you're going to migrate one of those channels, like Dan mentioned, If you have an existing community, that's great. If you don't, we do have ways where you could export that list of members from that team, and then through Viva Engage, you can actually import like,
Yeah.
CSV, seed some of that membership if you don't have it yet. So that's one idea. Just kind of depends on where you're at in the migration.
And,
Yeah, but happy to talk more. Oh, go ahead.
and I want to touch on topics briefly, because for those of you who know about Viva Topics, Engage has been moving over to Viva Topics for a while. Viva Topics is being retired, so we're going back to what we had before. So Engage is still going to have topics. We have a long history of topics, like 10 years of history of topics. And in fact, we were helping to seed all the topics into Viva Topics. But yeah, so we will continue having a topics ecosystem. You'll still be able to tag them. They'll still be there. You'll have topic pages. And like I said, we're adding stuff to it, like following and notifications. So don't worry, that's not going away if that's what you've been using. One more. Oh, two more. Look at that.
Sorry, just thinking from the mindset of like a knowledge management team, having maybe potentially a very large history of best answers over time.
Yep.
If a policy changes or if
Yep.
information changes, is there an easy way for a knowledge management team to go in and replace past best answers or correct best answers, update them in a way?
Trying to think if we actually have a filter for viewing things that only have best answers. The short answer right now is, we probably don't have as good of a tool as we could. Would love your feedback on how you might want to go about doing that, because it is something on our radar that we're talking about. Because we do see we're building up all this knowledge, it's feeding into CoPilot. It needs to stay up to date. So we'd love to talk to you about how you would want to do that.
It would be a manual process now of searching for
Yes.
the answer yourself and then going to that answer and editing it and updating it.
Yeah, you'd have to just manually go
It's,
through.
it's
and-
not a slick system, yeah.
Or go in community by community, go through, no good filter even. Again, at least filter by question, which helps. But
This isn't a question, it's just a humble brag. I have successfully migrated content from Teams channels into communities. You can do it natively because you're using, communities have a SharePoint backend.
yeah,
So you can migrate that content over natively. The only thing I've not been able to do is fully hydrate chats into communities. That's almost impossible. But the rest of your content can come over. You can either do it natively through, SharePoint and Teams and those methodologies, or you can use a tool like ShareGate, AvePoint, something like that, and move it over to.
excellent. Well, thank you all
Cool.
for the
Okay.
amazing questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone.